Hi, we are the Cirque Capstone project. My name is Brandon Foley. I worked alongside Jake Griffey, Jared Smith, and Nate Barlow on this project. We are part of the software engineering capstone. There's a data science capstone as well. So this is CS 494 and 495. Kind of the overarching goals of this class is to get hands-on experience working with the company on a real project. We had teams of 4 to 5 people, and we interacted a lot with the company. We had a liaison assigned to us that we would meet with once a week or every other week, but we'd be talking with him through email and other forms. So we worked with a company called Cirque. They're based in Salt Lake. They do touchpads. So a lot of the touchpads you see in an HP or a Dell laptop are Cirque touchpads. They do the touchpads themselves, and they also do the drivers for how they link up to Windows. Our liaison is a guy named Trevor Clifton, and he is one of the senior software engineers over at Cirque. Our original project is called the AI Smart Touchpad Driver. The original goal was to create a product that could analyze a user's touchpad movements just in normal everyday life. As they would use it, it would adjust. If they're moving too fast, it would slow it down. It would just try and get it at those perfect settings. Those were the expectations, kind of the goal that was laid out for us. And as we went along, we realized that wasn't quite feasible with what we could do. So we kind of pivoted over to a learning environment that would help them set up those settings at the beginning so that they could have a comfortable touchpad experience and then they could play those games later on if needed to be able to adjust those settings again. So those are some of the overarching, just a brief overview of what our project is. Here's some of the user stories that kind of just put it into the user's perspective. So as a laptop user, here's what I want it to do. So I want my trackpad to behave as I expect it to so that I can use it as competently as a mouse. A lot of people just use external mouses with their laptops now. We want to make it so that using a trackpad is as painless as possible so that we're not forced to use a mouse. In addition, here we don't want our trackpad to overshoot or go past the target all the time. We don't want it to be too fast or too slippery, we say here. We don't want it to be too slow, too sluggish, we say here. So we don't want to have to, take 5 seconds to get across the screen to click on something. The value proposition that we built in with our proposal is Cirque provides the best touchpad experience by learning and adjusting to their users' natural human-machine interactions and providing them with a unique, personalized setup that can't be found with other touchpads. So all this is about personalizing those settings and adjusting it to their use. And the way that we did that is through the game, is through allowing them to change those settings themselves and providing them with the feedback for that. There were a couple issues that we faced and changes that we made throughout the project. We kind of changed the scope of it a little bit. In the beginning, we talked a lot about doing some kind of AI, doing some algorithms to group different users, like how they use it, and adjust their settings based off of that. That wasn't really feasible in the scale of this project. It is possible later on, and as they collect data from these things, then that can be implemented. We also had some issues with Microsoft. They have some of the settings on lockdown, so we weren't able to change as many things as we would like to change. We were able to change cursor speed as well as scroll speed, which are the two main ones, and we are able to improve the usage quite a bit just through those, but there are some others that we thought we were going to be able to change that we weren't able to. Coronavirus impacted this project as well, working remotely, lots of Zoom meetings, trying to keep everyone coordinated on the same page, as well as having all the resources we needed to make this work.
Our goal is to be able to customize the user's touchpad to their specific needs. To do this, we developed an algorithm that can help detect the optimal cursor speed for the user and set it automatically for them by analyzing their touchpad usage. We would like to give some details of how that algorithm works now. You can imagine that the user starts with their cursor in some starting position. We then generate a random target that they need to get to. First, we calculate the line between the starting position and the target. And from there, we can calculate the line perpendicular to this target line that also runs through the target point. After that, we take this line and we shift it outwards in opposite directions. This first line beneath is called our undershoot line, and the outside line is called our overshoot boundary. We're going to use these boundaries to help detect whether or not the user's touchpad is too fast or too slow for them. Now you can imagine that the user starts in their starting position and they're aiming for this target. But when they move, they actually go past this overshoot boundary and they have to come back to it. This is what we would call an overshoot, and this is evidence that their touchpad speed might be a little bit too fast for them. On the other hand, the user might start at the starting position and instead take small, almost jumpy movements before they get to the target when they're before this undershoot boundary. This is what we would call an undershoot, and this is evidence that their touchpad speed might need to be sped up. We generate several random targets and analyze their usage over time. We detect whether or not their number of overshoots or undershoots are above a certain threshold, and if so, we adjust the touchpad speed accordingly to better fit their needs. And we repeat this process a few times so that we can narrow down the user's touchpad speed to what we think is the best one for them. So now let's see how this works in our actual game. We have a few different options when you come to the home screen. The first one is to play the game to be able to adjust your touchpad cursor speed, which is this game Fly Swatter. So if we go into that, we see we have this character here that we created, Pete the Pest Guy, who's here to help us set up our trackpad and get the settings right for you. So we'll click to continue. So he says hit the flies with the Fly Swatter. And so the flies will be the targets that we discussed from the algorithm, and we will be measuring the user's touchpad usage as they go and see if it needs to be sped up or slowed down. You'll see that we did create some music for this game. You can turn that on. So we have some little background music for the game. So we'll start it. Countdown. So we have these flies, and the user hits them. So if you see, at first, when I'm hitting these flies, sometimes they're a little far away, and sometimes my touchpad isn't quite fast enough to get it like immediately. So you can see that our algorithm detected that the speed was a little bit too slow. So there's going to have the user play a second round, this time with the touchpad being a little bit faster. Okay. So it's going a little bit better. The touchpad speed is sped up a little bit. Might be just a little bit too fast now because we're trying to learn what's best for the user. So yeah, so it's just a little bit too fast this time. We're narrowing the correct touchpad speed down to a specific number for our user. So we're going to play the third and final round and get to just the perfect touchpad setting for the user. And as you can see, these rounds are pretty short, around 30 seconds or less. So this touchpad speed is feeling pretty good. I'm able to get to the target just about in one single movement, so our algorithm has adjusted to match my needs. And when you get to the final screen, it gives you the analysis. We hit most of the flies, and they found a good setting for us. So now we can choose to either accept the new setting or keep the original. So I'm going to use the new suggested setting, and I can either schedule time to play this again if I want to check again in the future, or I can play the game again right now, or for now I'll just go home. So that is how the user's touchpad speed adjusted. So now the touchpad speed is faster than it was in the beginning, and it got narrowed down to just the right speed for this user.
Before this project, I have personally never liked using a touchpad. I'd often carry a mouse in my backpack and always pull it out whenever I had to do work on my computer. However, working with Cirque, I learned that you could scroll vertically and horizontally using 2 fingers on your touchpad. And this gesture alone helped me so much that I no longer pulled out my mouse as often, and I would just use that to be able to scroll around when I'm reading documents and different things. Then it also inspired me to learn some of the other gestures that the touchpad had to offer, and learning those has also increased my usability of the touchpad, that I now actually often don't use my mouse. I use the touchpad without having to get out my mouse to be able to do my homework or other work. One time I got frustrated. I was using a desktop computer that didn't have a touchpad, and I wanted to scroll horizontally, and the touchpad allows you to do that really easily, but a desktop, it's a lot harder. On a touchpad, you can even scroll diagonally, whereas a mouse has no way of doing that. I also taught my family because I thought it was so awesome. They also didn't know that this was possible. That they're like, wow, that you can do that. I showed them, and now a lot of them are like me that they used to not use the touchpad as often and would always have to carry around a mouse. But now they're using the touchpad to get their work done. And that's what inspired this next section is that I relayed that experience to my group, and we decided that it would be a good idea to make a fun and interactive way to learn these gestures so that the user would not be as frustrated using their touchpad, because these gestures really help make the touchpad a more usable tool. This first part is a game we called Space Flies because it is similar to the Atari game Galaga. And so as you can see, we have this space kind of thing. We have Pete in his spacesuit, and he's in this space shuttle area getting ready to launch. He welcomes you to the game, and he says, pressing the space bar to shoot. Use your touchpad to scroll around using that 2-finger gesture. There'll be a scroll slider you'll be able to adjust your speed in the game and also after. So we click, and then it says we are ready to launch. So let's launch, and you can see as I scroll, I can move the ship up and down. And when I click spacebar, I can shoot. If you miss, you get -1, and that's basically to prevent rapid fire. Because we want the user to be very precise with their movements so that their scroll speed reflects in the real world. And so you get 3 points for hitting them. Sound effects. And then you can go faster, or you can go a lot slower, and just make something that feels right for you. And then once you get to 30, then it takes you to this screen, and you have a time to, if you didn't adjust your scroll speed before, if you're too focused on the game, you can take that time now to adjust your scroll speed. And now we actually have a round 2 that you can play, and this is to help show you that you can also horizontally scroll and also help get you used to that and get your speed adjusted as well for horizontal scrolling. And if you want to finish early, you can always just click finish and then adjust your settings and go back home. This next part, helpful touchpad gesture tutorial, we didn't have time to create a game for each of the gestures. We just created one for the one we thought was the most important, but we still wanted the user to know of some of the other helpful gestures that we like using and that made the touchpad more usable for us. So you click on it, and we have these animations that show you some of the basics. Most people know already. Tapping will give you that normal left click. And you just click the arrow, tapping with 2 fingers, you can do a right click. And then we have you can swipe with your 2-finger scroll, and you can zoom by spreading your fingers apart. You can swipe down with your 3 fingers to minimize all your windows, and you can also swipe up to open the start menu. And so you can go through all those, and once you're done, you can just click done, and it takes you back to the home screen. For our future plans, we realized that lots of our algorithms, especially for the Fly Swatter game, could apply to many different areas for adjusting settings, and also a lot of other places that we could adjust the settings to make it more comfortable for the user, so that we can help the user feel more comfortable with their touchpad and also maybe other parts of their computer. We'd also consider looking into other gestures that we can make games for so that it's a funner experience for the user to learn how to use their touchpad gestures. We also never got around to creating an algorithm that would identify for the user the right scroll speed for them. It's possible after more thinking we could have came up with an algorithm, but just did not have the time for that. We also realized that we could always improve our artwork, add some animations, we could add some more audio, make our music more complex. Maybe we could get someone that is better at drawing that could draw some better artwork. Would be some other future plans.